I'm interested in art as a way of living instead of a way of making a living. The balancing between all these multiple facets in being a dad and being an artist and a husband, teacher, and author allows me to keep it fun and interesting.
The art world is always changing. It's a dynamic space where creativity and commerce collide. Finding your path and staying true to your craft isn't easy. Welcome to the Professional Artist Podcast. This show explores what it truly takes to build a meaningful and sustainable art career. Each week, we offer intimate deep dives that reveal which art business practices actually work, giving you the inspiration and insight to fuel your artistic journey. I'm your host today, Christina Demiani, and in this episode, we're speaking with Todd Casey, a contemporary still life painter whose work blends classical realism with unique storytelling. From his background in graphic design to his training at the Water Street Atelier, Todd's journey reflects curiosity, resilience, and creativity. His award-winning paintings are featured in major U.S. collections, and beyond the canvas, he's also an educator and author of 2 books, The Art of Still Life and The Oil Painter's Color Handbook. He also teaches at leading institutions like the Art Students League of New York and the Massachusetts College of Art. In today's episode, we dive into Todd's multifaceted career. Here's what you'll gain from our discussion: how to build a sustainable art business without relying solely on sales, why your most powerful work often comes when you stop chasing the market, how shifting between roles, artist, teacher, and parent, can actually fuel your creativity. All right, let's head into the gallery and explore the world of Todd Casey. We meet Todd Casey through a painting called The Naturalist, a table full of bones, butterflies, and everyday curiosities. But this isn't just a still life, it's a window into the way Todd sees the world.
The piece is a painting with skulls, and there's a little duck skull. There's bottles, there is butterfly, and also some starfish and a net. The thing about this painting is that it encompasses a lot of me in here. I'm a kid at heart. I'm curious, and curiosity is something that kind of comes back around in a lot of my work. Bugs, all the things that I did with my brother, I think when I was a kid, encompass it and bring their way into my work. So this painting is a little bit more choreographed. It's a collection of things that I've collected over the years from websites or in New York City. I scour the internet sometimes to find the right props to tell the stories. I'd say this is kind of about me being curious, but also the way in which I go and find all the props to find that net. It took a lot of time, and I think it also pulls from the graphic designer in me to find that one last little piece that would pull it together compositionally. A lot of the objects were vertical or horizontal, and it needed something to break it. So the circle in the background kind of ties it together. I mostly paint from life. It allows me to go in and find the objects and sit with them and spend time with them, move them around. Photography, you can't really reach in and change the photograph. But if it's sitting before you, I get to be the director of the whole production here. I stage it, I get all the props, I put the story together, I light it, and then I'll usually do a set of studies or warm myself up to the painting with some sketches. I think that's actually something that I pulled from my time at Ralph Lauren, in which a lot of the collections that we were putting together were based around a narrative. A lot of the times, Ralph was inspired by the Kennedys or the safari or something on Cape Cod. And then from there, you can take the idea and you can beat it up. It looks realistic. Visual poetry is what I'm aiming to do. There's an element of showing that it's a mark of a painting and not just a copy of a photograph.
Art wasn't handed to Todd, it was something he had to find. He pivoted a lot through multiple disciplines, and his path wasn't linear. But every detour brought him one step closer to painting.
I'm from Lowell, Massachusetts. What's fascinating to me was that we grew up relatively poor. We didn't really see a lot of art growing up, but my brother and I shared the journey together. Chris, my brother, also went to Mass Art with me and then also worked with me at Ralph Lauren. So we've always been tied together in art and creation and curiosity as well. I think I was always good at art, probably because of that, because we were doing it together. And then it didn't really take it seriously until I was in high school where I applied just to see if I could get a scholarship. There was going to be a show at the US Capitol and you could be a part of it if you won. Coming from a small city, I'm from Lowell, 100,000. I entered it thinking Paul Songus had just passed away. So I did the ode to Songus because he was from Lowell. And my teacher at the time had said, why don't you put in this other piece that you did of a lion on a tombstone, which is beautiful of Lowell Cemetery. And it won first place. I was completely shocked because when they called me to win, I walked over to the Songus piece and they were like, no, you won with this one. I was shocked all around. And then I think that was really where I began to take it seriously. And then I went to Mass Art in Boston with Chris. I convinced him to go back. So we were on the journey together. And after graduating, I moved to New York City to become an illustrator. I think I was more of a full time waiter than an illustrator. And then I got a job at Ralph Lauren at the time. And I was in the art department and realized the corporate world just was not for me. And I had a bigger calling. And then I went to animation school in San Francisco at the Academy of Art University. So I was hitting all of these aspects of art because what 21-year-old knows what they want to do for the rest of their life? And when I was there, I met Warren Chang, one of my teachers, and he said, you sound like you want to be a painter. And I did. I just didn't know where to go with it. And he said, you should go back to New York City and then look these people up. And I did. And that's how I got to Jacob Collins. And then that's when my atelier training started. But I also worked at Ralph Lauren again. It's almost like it encompasses about 10 years of my life. So all of these small little threading stories of narratives and animation and illustration, Ralph Lauren, fine art, they all come together in my work. I like to pull from all of them together.
You mentioned supporting yourself working in restaurants. I always like to know about the practical reality of this journey. How did you manage it to get to be a full-time artist? Were you always working additional jobs?
I have so many stories of crazy jobs. Even when I was at the atelier, we were learning the ropes, but I couldn't afford it. And I had even bartered to do computer work in exchange, and it was something like $325 for tuition. But I was still so broke that I had to work as a waiter in the West Village. I think it was about 3 days a week. And I've had so many jobs all across the board. I had gone back to Ralph Lauren after my training just so that my wife and I could buy a house and can't really get a mortgage if you're an artist, or it's really hard because they're going to look at the last 5 years of your taxes. There's always a practical side to everything that I do. So for the family, I decided I'll go do this thing and then I'm going to work through at night. I'll just paint every night and then on the weekends. And then it wasn't till I was able to flip it that all the things really began to fall into place where I was offered. A friend of mine said, you should write a book. And I did. And then from there, it's turned into teaching and then multiple galleries. And I think Campbell says that when you follow your bliss, doors will open where for others there were walls. I had it with Ralph Lauren at the time. Just I didn't want the corporate world, but I just knew there was something deep inside that said you need to go do this thing. And I was like, I'll just do Uber, be an Uber driver or something just so I can paint more. But now it's flipped into full time and it's at a beautiful place.
What does it really take to build a life around painting? In a world wired for quick wins, Todd shares why real creative work still takes time and how passion made him keep going when almost everyone else stopped.
I think the way that I would rationalize it was that selling paintings is like the hardest thing in the world. And I thought about it as I can either do that and something else. And I think the way that people solve that problem is it can be Ralph Lauren It could be teaching. It could be something that has a stream of income coming in. Now, if you have the passion, I think you will figure out the way to do it. Because I didn't not paint when I worked at Ralph Lauren. I valued painting more than I did watching TV or doing something else. I think if you have the passion for it, no matter what somebody throws in front of you, you will figure out a way to do it. And I would just say, just keep moving forward. I almost feel like sometimes I'm that person that just kept doing it out of passion. And then 20 years later, some of my friends that don't do it are like, I can't believe you did it. And I'm kind of like, I can't believe you're not doing it because I had the passion from the beginning. But it's very fulfilling for me to do it. So I think that's also part of why I'll do anything to make it so I can express myself with paint. It's so hard because we're so connected to immediate satisfaction and things these days with Instagram and Facebook. But at the end of the day, you want to make sure that whatever treadmill that you're going to get on, you can get off. And some of these seeds that you're sowing are authentic. And that's why when I'd say I put together the still lifes and then I take time, I think even someone like Malcolm Gladwell talks about it when he talks about writing, where he would write things and then hide them for 3 months and come back to them. And if it's a good idea, it still is. If you have a passion to follow through with that idea or that painting, you will still have it. Sometimes time in between will allow you to not do the bad paintings. And then sometimes you'll just do a bad painting. And sometimes you'll pivot the idea and then all of a sudden it clicks. But time, I think, is also a part of it. I think in a world in which a lot of it is like content driven, content sometimes seems like the antithesis of time. I need content. I needed it yesterday. One of the reasons why I didn't like fashion, everything was, when do you need this thing? And they were like, yesterday. And sometimes you can do good work under pressure, but then sometimes you need time. We all have different temperaments. And some people just need more time to work through an idea.
Todd doesn't want to copy the past, he wants to be in conversation with it. He reflects on how an artistic voice comes from staying curious, looking everywhere, and knowing when to shut the door and listen to your own instincts.
The way I think about it is like this. I don't want to feel like I'm pastiche, like I'm just stepping back into a time portal and then I look like Fontaine Latour Part 2 or I am a Dutch still life painter. There's something that can be said. There's a connection to reality. There's a connection to ourselves as well. And I find in my work, that's what I'm looking for is that if you paint things that are interesting to you, that'll probably come across in the audience when they see it. How do you expect the audience to have a feeling for them if you don't? You could go outside and paint something from today and be present, or you can go back and read Hemingway or Homer or whatever floats your boat. But there's just a plethora to pull from now. And when things cross genres and you have this large well always to pull from, I find it inspiring. It's like, what do you want to paint today? I want to paint today what my interests are. And therefore, if you're always taking in, then you're always shifting and moving with the world. There's always like duality in all of the ways that I think of everything that I do. I love the old French academics. I love Chardin. I love looking back, but also looking forward. And between those two opposites, then it allows for the freedom of thought. I can study the masters. I can look at the people that are doing it today. But then I want to go in my studio and close the door and then sift through my own thoughts and let it pour out.
The next painting Todd's sharing with us is Green Skull with Lemons, a turning point in his work. It's where he let go of over planning, trusted his gut, and brought classical techniques into conversation with contemporary objects and themes.
So this painting I brought up because it was pivotal. I started my grad school in 2006 at the Academy of Art. And I always wanted to finish it. And then in, I think it was like 2018, I decided to finish it online. But at that point, I already had written a book and I was in galleries and I was like, I don't want to do animation anymore. I want to finish the degree. What should I do? And I could do painting, but I'm like, I already am a painter. I don't know what they're really going to help me with. I've learned how to keep learning always. So somebody's always going to offer something that will help you shift and pivot. So I took it as a way to take and maybe push outside of the boundary, outside of the box, the conformity, the thing that I already felt comfortable and get a little uncomfortable. Now, I had worked mostly in an indirect manner. The reason why I offered this painting is this was direct. This was like just jump right in onto the surface with your heart. You have the skill sets. You trained for so long that we're going to take those training wheels off and then jump in with your heart and then fix it with your head. And that's what this is. So this painting, I think, is a good composition. It's a little maybe strange to some people, but it's like a green skull bottle, which is, I think, just a vodka company. And then I filled it with absinthe. So it has this kind of contemporary feel to it, but also an ode to the past. The title is crafted to the things that I'm looking at the time. For instance, this one doesn't have an interesting title. This one was just very direct. Because the psychology of the title can also sometimes influence the way in which people go, "What is he trying to say?" But sometimes I'll take contemporary music, and then if the song is stuck in my head and I'm painting to it, it's the title of the song because it's directly related, but indirectly.
Todd is also a published author, but his first book almost didn't happen. What started as a favor for a friend turned into a crash course in writing under pressure without knowing where the project might lead him. Listen as he describes the ups and downs of publishing for artists and the opportunities that have happened since.
In 2016, I left Ralph Lauren. I just was content with making 30 or $40,000, whatever I had to do to just allow myself to paint. 2017, my buddy Ken Salas contacts me. Hey man, I got a book deal with Monticelli Press. That's amazing. And I'm like, why is he calling me to tell me? He's not bragging. He needed help and he wanted me to help him with the illustrations. And I said, I'd be happy to help you in any way I can. He came over every week for a couple months because he just needed like diagrams. It was a teaching book. And in that, he would send me stuff and we would talk when we got together. And he was like, dude, you should write a book because you know exactly what you're talking about. And you're able to take the concept and break it down simply. And I said, I guess I'd write one if I ever had the opportunity. And lo and behold, it's like the universe heard it. He was at Monticelli editing his book and they had a person writing a still life book, but it didn't work out. Ken called me right up and I was like, okay, I'll do it. So on Monday, I sent a sample chapter. I think it was like March, and I waited and waited all the way till August. And they finally got back to me and said, your deal's on. We want to offer you the contract. Now, in April, my wife got pregnant. So I was like, oh man, we're going to have a child. I can't really write a book with a child on the way. And then when they said you got the deal, I was like, when do you want the book? Because my daughter's due at December. And they said, can you get it to us at the end of December? And I was like, yeah, that's best case scenario. And I thought, I don't know how long it takes to write a book. Completely ignorant to the fact, because speaking to people after who have written books, they were like, I had 2 years, I had 4 months. My daughter came out early. And then I ended up asking for just a little bit of an extension. So I'd say I wrote it in 4 to 5 months. After that, COVID happened. The book actually sold out in 3 months. I couldn't believe it. And then I wrote the second book, the Oil Painter's Color Handbook. And I wrote that book and that's taken off. So I'm in the contract for two more books right now. In terms of writing a book, again, just like anything, do it if you have the passion to do it. Don't worry about the payoff. For me, the pay, I wouldn't say is feeble, but the pay, I blew through my whole advance of my royalties to write the book. And the reason why I did it was I was just going to make the best book possible. I didn't think about, I just want money. I just thought, I need a camera. I'm going to get a really good camera. I got Gabriel Weisberg, who was an art historian, to write for it because I thought he knows way more than I do on this. He's going to add to the book. and then all the museums and stuff that I needed to get permission to use paintings for. And I think I used a couple from Sotheby's as well. Some people will give them to you for free, people will not. But anyway, I just thought I'm just going to make the best beautiful thing possible, and the rest is out of my hands. And I can't think about, am I going to make money? I got no money, essentially. I'd used all the money to write the book, but it's come back and it's made money since. And I'm amazed. And it's opened up so many more opportunities. And I think it's that passion. The thing with art is if you have a passion for the thing, it will come through and hopefully it will lead to better things, but enjoy the work that you're doing.
Teaching wasn't always part of Todd Casey's plan, but it's had a number of benefits and it's grown into a passion. He shares how having multiple income streams lets him keep painting what he loves and takes the pressure off of selling his work.
I didn't know I was a teacher. I think it was 2012 or 13. Somebody had found me in one of the magazines because I won an award and said, "Will you teach?" And I said, "I guess I could." And then I started to teach and just thinking like, this is actually really good because what keeps you sharp and then you're problem solving. So not only is it external and helping others out, I'm also like, I say this all the time when I'm teaching now, I take so much more in from them because I'm first listening to what problems are, but I'm also handed a brush that I wouldn't have used, a different canvas, helping them problem solve something maybe I wouldn't have painted. So if you're aware, then you're always taking in. And I've always been one to say that everyone you meet knows something more about something than you do. And if you're always taking it in, then you'll always be inspired to do something with it. I started in person and people were interested in the atelier word at the beginning because it's very romantic and it's French. So that's what I was doing in person, which was to meet with groups and then work on the fundamentals of understanding light in relation to a form, breaking concepts down into a very, not just an optical way of thinking, but a very conceptual way to take it. So I think what happened was I was teaching and then the reverb or back and forth between my students then helped make the books great because I knew what they were looking for and how I would teach it. And then from there, I started teaching at the Art Students League, doing workshops. And then I think COVID hit and everything pivoted. And that's when I think all the people that wouldn't have taken classes online had no other option. And that's really when everything began to flourish for me. So what happened was first almost a tragedy because COVID came out and I had a book come out, and I had a show called The Art of Still Life, and the 2 were in tandem a week before everything closed because of COVID, so the show tanked. I think I sold 3 or 4 paintings, and now out of that is like out of the ashes arises the phoenix. This new business was born, and I started to teach online and Patreon and a lot of these opportunities for people now to give it a shot when they wouldn't have in the past. Now I teach a lot online. I teach at the Academy of Art University online. I sometimes teach at Mass Art in Boston, but I do a lot of my teaching just as my own because it allows me to serendipitously teach whatever I want to. If tomorrow I want to teach still life and then the next I want to teach, I don't know, watercolor, then I can give it a shot and I'm not locked into one thing. The art world is weird. It's totally weird. Weird in the sense that there's a difference between what painters wanna paint and a difference between what the market demands, and galleries are a business, so a lot of the time they're like, "This sold, and therefore I want 10 more of them." Now, that seems different from being serendipitous and being like a bird flying around going, "I wanna paint whatever I want." I try not to paint for a market, but it's also a bad business decision. So I try to make sure I think it's called ikigai, the like Venn diagram and the overlap between what's the market and what your interests are, and possibly that's where you can make your money. So instead of painting for a market, I've moved away. I don't think that's helped the business side, but the teaching allows me to follow my bliss in that sense. Painting sales is like 20, 25%. Teaching is something like 50%. Patreon also brings in another source of income. So, in terms of diversifying revenue streams, I like to have a bunch of them. And therefore, if I want to take a risk on something, put out paintings that wouldn't sell, then it doesn't take the family down.
Sometimes the best work happens when you stop trying to sell it. Todd shares the story behind Collection of Bottles, a painting he made just for himself, and how peer feedback helped him realize it might be one of his most meaningful pieces.
Ralph Lauren's very commercial. And we would meet with one of the teams. We would find what sold the year before. They would always come back with the numbers and say, this performed well. And then the question would be like, so what is the update of it? And how do we sell the new version to the person? A lot of the time we'd have to push back as artists saying, I don't know if I want to do the same thing as I did yesterday. So the reason why I pull this one up for peer support is a similar conversation in that this painting was part of the Art of Still Life show. And this was just, I didn't care. This was like me painting the thing I wanted to paint. There's not a lot of color in it. It's dark. Contemporary paintings are usually light and vibrant, a lot of color. And then old master paintings tend to be dark. And the question sometimes is, which one do you want to paint? And sometimes I don't want to think and I just want to paint and I want to think about a market or if I could sell it. So I painted this thing just out of pure joy and bliss for myself. And then in the context of the show, somebody came up to me and they were like, I want to buy one of your paintings. What do you recommend? What would you buy? Wanted my opinion, which I was like, that's great. And I said, my favorite painting, I think in the show, seeing them all together, there was two of them. One was a corner of my studio, and that's because it's when I used to hold my daughter. I think I was painting it while I was holding her when she was just born. So there's a visceral connection to the thing, but I didn't want to sell that one. And then this one, which was just pure out of me, what would I paint? And I remember some of my early teachers showing them like another thing that I was painting, and then I flipped by this frog in a jar. It was the Evolution store in New York City. And he was like, that's more interesting than whatever you're trying to show me. Your own interests are going to come across in the work that you do. This, I think, was a springboard for me. And when I talk to people and I'm like, what would you say is your favorite painting of mine? A lot of them bring this up. And I think there's something to be said in following your own bliss and not painting for markets in that sense. So that's why I brought it up. I think it's a beautiful painting and I still look at it years later and still like it.
How do you balance being a painter, a teacher, and a parent without burning out? Listen as Todd explains how shifting roles actually helps him stay creative.
It's a great question. It's not easy. Right now, I've been watching my daughter for the last 6 years, which is why we're going to shift. And now Gina's going to come in and help. It should allow more time for me to be able to do more. I don't know if I will do more because I like the balance of family with painting and writing. I get bored if I do one thing too much. It's almost like the time in between to take projects and move through them. I find that the time in between moving through these many things allows me to be objective with it as much as we can, but then also taking in the spirit of a child, being with one all the time, and then painting with her, and then studying her and taking that in. And I think in The Art of Still Life, I wrote a Robert Henri quote, which is, I'm interested in art as a way of living instead of a way of making a living. And I think that there's an art to it, to bring it in and keep it all interesting and the balancing between all these multiple facets in being a dad and being an artist and a husband, teacher, and author allows me to keep it fun and interesting so it doesn't feel like I'm Homer Simpson hitting that one red button the whole time.
Is there anything else that you would like to share with our audience of artists and art professionals?
Stay curious and stay open. John Cleese did a whole thing on creativity and play, in which allowing the mind to play and to think. I think sometimes we don't realize that we're in a way of thinking. Like if you're in an atelier or you're showing with a gallery, they don't really want you to play all that much. It's a market and they're trying to get you to continue on the collector base. And I get that a lot. That's fine. Maybe you want a gallery also that you can put your play work. And a lot of artists had this throughout the history of time. And a lot of curiosity is the thread between artists so that they can serendipitously move wherever they want to. And I would say keep that curiosity.
Todd Casey's journey is a reminder that art lives where curiosity meets discipline. By blending classical techniques with personal vision, he's built a body of work that's both rooted in tradition and unmistakably his own. Through teaching, writing, and building community, Todd shows us that growth doesn't happen in isolation. It happens when we share what we know, stay open, and keep learning along the way. There's no single path to becoming an artist. The real work is trusting your instincts, following what lights you up, being persistent, and knowing your voice is worth putting out there into the world. This podcast grows because people like you share it. So if you got value today, if it inspired you to think differently or take action, hit follow or subscribe and send it to one person who needs to hear it. That's how we keep making more episodes. Thank you for listening to the Professional Artist Podcast, and until next time.